Much has been said lately by professors and history and archaeology enthusiasts about the participation of women in ancient wars, ranging from research that reveals little but is conveniently embellished with sensationalist articles and headlines, all tainted by political bias, to excavations that, while uncovering new data about ancient cultures, ultimately leave us with more questions than answers. Given that the topic of female warriors is extremely debated and promoted, how much do we know at an academic level about the possible existence of the Amazon warriors? Let's find out right now. Before discussing evidence, let's provide some context. When and how do the Amazons first appear in the historical record? Homer recounts in the Iliad how, during their war with the Greeks, the Trojans received help from the manly Amazons, a people from Asia Minor comprised solely of women skilled in archery and horsemanship, whose queen Penthesilea was defeated by Achilles. Although Homer tells us they were equal to men, the most famous of them fought and lost in battle against three Greek heroes, Hercules, Theseus, and Bellerophon. Scenes from these battles were popular in Greek art, especially on pottery and the monumental statuary that adorned some of the most important buildings in the Greek world, including the Parthenon in Athens. According to myth, the Amazons were daughters of Ares, the god of war, and were members of an exclusively female society, where men were welcome only for reproductive purposes, and all male infants were killed. As we just mentioned, they were frequently associated with the area around the southern coast of the Black Sea, particularly with the city-state of Themyscira. Another connection was with the Anatolian Peninsula, specifically Ephesus, where it is believed that the Amazons made a sacrifice to the goddess of the hunt, Artemis, in her temple, and also performed war dances, establishing a ceremony that was repeated annually from then on. Now, before delving into the archaeological evidence, let's examine their place in history. Beyond the well-known mythological accounts, Herodotus, in his histories, provides a detailed account of an encounter between the Amazons and the Scythians. Young warriors from the latter group persuaded some Amazons to form a new society together, though the women insisted that neither they nor their descendants would change their way of life in any way. This new lineage was considered the origin of the Sarmatians in southern Russia, a plausible story for a people renowned for their horses and their warlike prowess. Essentially, the Amazon society was thought to be a male-dominated society in reverse, as they engaged in traditionally male-dominated activities such as horsemanship, hunting, and warfare. In the realm of legend, without any supporting historical evidence, it is said that the Amazons burned off their right breast to improve their bow and spear-throwing abilities. Indeed, the term Amazon was understood as without breast or unbreastfed. Another alternative origin for the name is that it comes from the Persian word simply meaning warrior. A final interpretation claims that the name derives from Armenian, meaning goddess of the moon, and refers to the moon priestesses on the southern coast of the Black Sea who sometimes carried weapons. It is worth noting that the Amazons are not depicted in Greek art without a breast. Historian Adrian Mayer suggests that the literary confusion, therefore, stems from similarities between the word mazon and the Greek word mastos. In art, Amazons are often depicted wearing hoplite armor and riding horses. Their most common weapons are the bow and spear, but Amazons are also shown carrying axes. They were considered not only capable warriors, but also experts in ambushes and cavalry charges. Other authors expanded upon this tentative description by linking it to the Trojan myth, stating, as Hippocrates did, that when they were babies, their mothers cauterized their right breast with a red-hot iron to prevent its growth, so that they could shoot better with a bow. It was also said that they practiced the barbaric custom of not marrying until they had killed 3 men, and that their society did not have social classes based on wealth. For centuries, all these descriptions were considered mere myth without any basis, but the discovery of certain tombs, dated between the 6th and 4th centuries BC, forced a reassessment of their veracity. Archaeological excavations of Sarmatian and nomadic tribal graves from other regions, especially Kazakhstan, dating back to the time of Herodotus, have revealed the likelihood that some of the women found were warriors. The remains of the female skeletons were found not only with weapons, armor and horse trappings, but also with signs of wounds from blades and arrowheads. One Scythian tomb in particular, dating from the 4th century BC and located near ancient Tiras on the northern coast of the Black Sea, contained a female skeleton with a skull wound, probably caused by a battle axe, and a bronze arrowhead firmly embedded in her knee. The deceased had been surrounded by 2 iron spears, 20 arrows with bronze tips and a bronze knife, as well as pieces of body armor. Far from being unique, skeletal analysis and the study of accompanying objects reveal that of more than 1,000 graves of steppe nomads scattered across territories from Turkey to Russia, an impressive 37% were those of armed women, many of whom had survived or succumbed to wounds typical of violent one-on-one combat. Most of these women, like the Amazons of Greek mythology, were always young, between 16 and 30 years old. Did the creators of the myths, Greek historians and artists, draw inspiration not only from their imagination when creating and describing the legends of the Amazons, but also from the historical reality of these Eurasian female warriors? If so, these young Sarmatian and Scythian women would be the origin of the Amazon legend. But before we get carried away by the findings, let's delve a little deeper. Are we convinced that this evidence gives us the certainty to call them warriors? Russian archaeologist Vera Kovalevskaya points out that when Scythian men were away fighting or hunting, nomadic women would have had to defend themselves, their livestock, and their pastures. During the period when the Scythians advanced into Asia and achieved some dominance in the northeast, there was a 28-year period when the men would have been away on campaign. During this time, the women would not only have had to defend themselves, but also reproduce, and this could well be the origin of the idea that the Amazons mated once a year with their neighbors, if Herodotus did indeed base this on a real event. That said, let's talk about other findings. In 1988, archaeologists Sayanov and Kilunovskaya discovered the partially mummified tomb of a 2,600-year-old young Scythian warrior in Sarigbulan, located in present-day Siberia, during an emergency excavation. The archaeologists found the remains so well preserved that they were able to identify a mole on what was left of the corpse's face. In addition, the body had a rough seam in the abdominal area, indicating an attempt at artificial mummification. It was estimated that he was between 12 and 13 years old at the time of his death, and he was buried with a complete set of weapons: an axe, a bow, and a quiver with 10 arrows. No beads, mirrors, or other objects were found to indicate that the body was female, and for 3 decades his remains have been classified as belonging to a young Scythian warrior. Years later, researchers were offered the opportunity to conduct tests to determine the sex and genetic affiliation of this body. The result was surprising, as it turned out that the remains belonged to a young warrior. Her burial, along with a set of weapons, introduces a new element of interest regarding the structure of the nomadic Scythian society, and involuntarily brings to mind the myth of the Amazons, described by Herodotus. The young warrior was buried in a double-breasted fur coat that reached below her knees, with long, straight sleeves, and made from rodent skins underneath the coat. She wore a shirt, which has barely survived, and light brown trousers or a skirt. It is estimated that female horsewomen existed in the Scythian era within the nomadic and semi-nomadic Persian-speaking tribes of Eastern Europe. These Amazons likely guarded livestock, property and dwellings when the men were away on long military campaigns. They were, therefore, trained and adapted to the lifestyle of the typical and fearsome steppe horsewoman, but not necessarily with the same rigor or the same training objectives. They knew the art of battle and possessed the ferocity necessary to defend their people, but they did not necessarily go to war. Our conclusion, therefore, the evidence is far from sufficient to determine the existence of Amazon warriors, much less a matriarchal kingdom. The evidence only confirms one thing: these steppe women were skilled in combat. Whether these were indeed the Amazon warriors, and whether their mythical and fearsome reputation was true, remains to be seen. Who knows? They are mentioned by some of the great historians many times, and if they were a nomadic people like the Scythians, it's highly unlikely they would have left many traces of their existence. Therefore, we leave the debate open to the viewer's interpretation.